Question 3C was our final ledger reconstruction question, and we're using the same info. So we've got a business called Columbus City, and it has a 12-month reporting period, and it's doing a budget for the 12 months ended 31st of December 2023. And the information we're given was the following estimates of things that we expect to happen during 2023. So these are all guesses because it's a budget. We've also got some account balances, and on the 1st of January we have the actual balances. So these have actually, they exist, they've happened, but then we've also got some estimates for the end of the year. And finally, we're told the bank balance at the end of the 31st of December is expected to be an overdraft because it's credit of 28,500. As per usual, don't get too, don't try and read all this in reading time and go, well, I've got to remember it all. Get your question in this case. Reconstruct the accounts payable ledger to determine the cash paid to accounts payable for 2023. Dates are not required. And now use that to drag in the information. And to do that, you need to remember that accounts payable is a liability account. So that means it will go up on the credit side and it will go down on the debit side. And then we need to remember what items would go in it and on which side. So the first thing, there will always be an opening balance. And because it's a liability, it will be on the credit side. Therefore, the closing balance will be down here on the debit side. So what would make accounts payable go up? Well, the only thing that would make it go up is credit purchases of inventory / GST. What would make it go down? Well, when we pay back accounts payable, so when we pay them back for the amounts we owe, that would decrease it. We could also get a discount revenue. And lastly, we might send it back because it's faulty or damaged. That's called a purchase return, and we'll also get credited our GST. And that is absolutely everything that could go in accounts payable. So remember to read the question to figure out, is there something that they're asking us to get in particular that we don't know unless we sort of calculate it. And it says here, you need to determine the cash paid to accounts payable. So that will be this one here. So this is going to be X, and we're going to have to solve for it. So what we're going to do now is go through our info, and when we find something, we plonk it in here. Now, what's interesting with this question is it actually seems like a bit of an error, or maybe it's too easy. It's not. Just if you go through all this info here, none of this goes in accounts payable. So if we had credit sales, that's not this. This is credit purchases, so it's not that. Discount expenses, well, I'm looking for discount revenue, so it's not that. Wages have nothing to do with this. Inventory write-down doesn't go in here. Cost of sales doesn't go in here. Other expenses paid don't go in there, and neither does depreciation. So it almost looks like something's missing. It's actually not. What we do need, though, are these account balances. And so what we've got here is we're told on the 1st of January, the actual balance of accounts payable is 45,000. So that will be my opening balance. And the expected or estimated balance at the end of 2023 is 50,000. So that will be my closing balance. And then we are kind of done with all the info. So the question then becomes, well, I've got to solve X here, but it doesn't really make sense because, every question you get is different. But for accounts payable, two things have to happen every period. Otherwise, the question makes no sense. You have to pay them back, which is X, and you have to buy inventory / GST. Otherwise, why would they even have an accounts payable ledger? So those two things have to be there. Now, discount revenues and purchase returns might be there, they might not. So if we need to find X here, well, I guess the question becomes, I need this number here for credit purchases / GST, but it wasn't there. So what you want to do is look at the other practice SACs and go, well, sometimes to get this number, you need to have done the inventory ledger first or vice versa. And what we saw when we did the inventory ledger in question 3A was you actually had to figure out the credit purchases of inventory here in yellow. That was X. And now you've got that. You now have the credit purchases of inventory here. All you've got to do is add in the 10% GST. So in this case, it's 330,000. So we're going to add 10% to that, and we'll get 363,000. So now we do have everything we need. We know discount revenues and purchase returns aren't there, so we get rid of them. And this reference here will be bank, and we'll just call it X. How do we solve for X? Well, we add up one side or the other. We can't add up this side, but we cannot add up these two numbers here. So if we add these two numbers, we get a total of 408,000. We go to the other side on the same line, and we write the same number. And then to get X, we subtract away all the other numbers. And the only other number here is 50,000. So that number becomes 358,000. So this one is like kind of so simple, it actually is really difficult because it kind of feels like it's missing information. But it's just another variation on the question. And if you know what goes in accounts payable or all of your ledgers, then they really can't stump you too much. All you got to do is plonk in the information and know that if it's not there, maybe it was in a question I did earlier. And that's how we got this number here in green. The credit purchase of inventory we had to get from question 3A. So the marks for this, there are only 4. We've got 1 mark for the opening and closing balances, 1 mark for the credit here to inventory / GST, and just noting that, well, that becomes a carry forward mark. So maybe in question 3A, you got an answer of 400,000. Well, as long as you write 440,000, because you add the GST, you'll get the mark here. And then that gives us 2 marks for our debit to bank. And that way you get carry forward marks. If you do get these bits wrong, all you got to do is make sure your maths add up and you'll get your 2 marks here.